All right, we're going to start doing ticket numbers now, because that was our last elected official speaker. So, look at your ticket number, your academic counter. We're going to start with number 1. Everyone else, if you're 2, 3, 4, we're going to get in line and start getting ready. I'm going to remind everybody one more time, don't interrupt the speaker, okay? Give them the 3 minutes. Then you can do all of your cheering for or doing whatever afterwards. One other reminder, we're going to do a quick break at 8:30. We can sort of get through each person as quick as possible. We'll try to make sure we get through everybody. Okay? Be respectful. Number 1.
Tom Riley, Tomrily. I'm a Cortlandt Manor resident as well as a local 60 member. As a Cortlandt Manor resident, my house is only a few hundred feet away from the existing 26-inch pipeline, which is over 50 years old. Now, all day long, me and my brother and sister members dig these pipes up and replace them and maintain them. So we all know what a 50-year-old pipe looks like. It doesn't get better with age. So it's either got to be done now or 10 years from now, but it's got to be done. Now, as a union member, sure, we want the jobs. We need the jobs, and absolutely. As far as the position of the pipe coming up by Indian Point, I believe it's the perfect spot, because once you have a 42-inch gas main in place, you can branch off it, supplement the power with a gas generation station, or completely replace Indian Point with gas generation. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
My name is Flo Brodley. I'm a grandmother from Somers with a B-R-O-D-L-E-Y. I'm from Somers, where the pipeline already lies beneath condos in my Heritage Hills development. We're also blessed with a metering station, a regulating station, and a nearby compressor station. Surely our community of seniors and elementary school children has done its share in helping Spectra's vast holdings while being subjected to toxic pollutants which threaten our health and put us in the crosshairs of dangers to our first responders. Surely an independent health assessment is not too much to ask of a federal agency whose mission should be to protect us, U.S. citizens. As a grandmother, I would like my children and my children's children to know that they can have faith in the United States government to look out for their health and safety. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. My name is John Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R. I am an environmental attorney representing a number of folks in the community. In my previous life, I served as the regional attorney for the Department of Environmental Conservation for this entire region through which the pipeline passes. I appreciate staff's effort. I understand the challenges of an environmental impact statement review. They're not small, they are significant. Nonetheless, I'm here to say that the draft EIS is far from complete. Taken through the perspective of the family I represent, I live adjacent to the right-of-way in Yorktown, have lived there for generations before the pipeline was even here, and are currently identified as the terminus of the AIM project on Stony Street. They are very concerned about their property and the public health, including air and water contamination releases impacting families, impacts to the community parkland, eminent domain and destruction of Granite Knolls, which is a state-protected parkland of regional and statewide significance. They're also concerned about the location of maintenance activities close to homes, to parklands, to families, to schools that use and enjoy them regularly. Really, the public comment period here, as far as I can see, is about 2 projects that perhaps should be considered as one. one to be built in 2015 and 2016, and a second in 2017, known as the Atlantic Bridge, which we'll get to in a moment. Looking straight away at the draft environmental impact statement submitted for public review on August 6th, there is, and it's been mentioned already, a clear conclusion. Construction and operation would result in some adverse environmental impacts, but they'd be reduced to less than significant levels. The determination is based upon a review of the information provided by Algonquin. Speaking for the staff, we developed site-specific mitigation measures that Algonquin would implement to reduce the environmental impacts that would otherwise be evident by the construction and operation of the project. Two very important points. Brings us to the reason, why are we here? Earlier, staff noted NEPA. And the significant responsibility upon the federal government is to solicit comments, modify and develop alternatives, and make factual corrections and explain why comments do not merit further agency consideration. In this situation, a number of local concerns were only addressed to some degree in this draft EIS. Contaminated water discharge, wetlands issues, biodiversity and the value of parkland, traffic and property values, and socioeconomic impacts, including residential zoning issues where a lot of these communities are located. This is found in Section 5. No public comment, however, is possible in two very significant areas. One, where FERC expects information. Thank you, duly noted.
We're on comment of number 4,
Jonathan Hyman, JONATHANHYMAN. Tonight is a night that presents the best of what our society has to offer. We elect representatives who make laws, in this case NEPA, and establish commissions, in this case FERC, in order to best serve the needs of the public. In order to ensure that we have a voice and are granted access to have a say in our present and future, by law, this public hearing commences tonight. We have this right to speak, but we must live up to our end of the bargain, because it's not enough to just say, we don't want it, it's junk, get it out of my backyard, and it's simply not enough to say, I need a job. This has long been established as not a way to testify at a public hearing. However, this process, and indeed our entire form of government, demands one thing, and if this demand is not met, our culture as we know it crumbles. Citizens need to know the score, so to speak. So, as those of you who take these comments tonight from us will surely know, you have before you an informed and engaged public. The people here from a cross-section of society have come before you to present competent, legal, helpful, and informed research and ideas that you must now consider. You will also hear tonight that you are not just required to go home and review the enormous load of data and comments you receive. I submit to you tonight that you are obligated morally and legally to make sure that this incomprehensibly incomplete DEIS is a balanced document with all tests and studies completed so citizens can comment on them. I submit to you tonight that you are obligated morally and legally to make sure that this incomprehensibly incomplete DEIS is a balanced document that is not rushed forward because a multi-billion-dollar corporation has a construction schedule to adhere to. And most importantly, I submit to you tonight that you are obligated morally and legally to make sure that this incomprehensibly incomplete DEIS requires that Spectra Algonquin pay for an independent analysis of the risks involved in siting a 42-inch pipeline expansion on fault lines near a nuclear site in a densely population that so clearly does not deal with some of the very serious local issues that you will hear about tonight. I will be forwarding to FERC by the deadline my own very detailed documents on some local issues regarding alienation that the town of Yorktown is engaging in, and conspiring with Spectra Energy to illegally avoid, we believe, review under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. Thank you very much for holding this public hearing, and thank you for considering my remarks.
My name is Paul Blanche. I reside in Hartford, Connecticut. My name is spelled Paulblanch. I'm an expert witness on nuclear issues, unpaid. I'm a professional engineer with more than 45 years addressing nuclear safety issues. I am not an attorney. I support everything Representative Galiff said before with respect to her position on Indian Point, the safety of Indian Point. I would like to remind FERC of its responsibilities for the issuance of the draft environmental impact statement and the final statement. If we look at the requirements for the environmental impact statement under 18 CFR Part 380, which addresses the minimum filing requirements, we find a lot of issues that fail to be addressed in the report. One of those requirements, it says, describe measures proposed to protect the public from failure of the proposed facilities. Discuss the design and operational measures to avoid or reduce risk. Describe the measures to exclude public from hazardous areas. Discuss measures used to minimize problems arising from malfunctions and accidents. And it goes on in requirements, none of which I have seen addressed in the draft environmental impact statement. And I think it's unconscionable that these would be totally ignored, the risk of an accident, which are clearly required. The DEIS states, quote, the proposed route would not pose any new safety hazards to the Indian Point facility. They do this and make this statement without any analysis, foregone conclusions. Indian Point, like Fukushima, is an accident that could result in the permanent displacement of residents and businesses within a 50-mile radius and more than $1 trillion of social and economic damage. We also have the possible corrosion problems from the stray current generated by the proposed 350,000 volt high voltage DC line adjacent to the proposed high pressure gas line. Again, not addressed. My review of the DEIS concludes that these issues have yet to be addressed. FERC must address all these issues, and I will be supplying formal comments in writing by September 29th, and I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
That means 7 and 8 should get ready to go.
Good evening. Susanna Glidden, SUZANNAH, US EPA ranks our tri-state area as non-attainment, above limit of acceptable air quality. American Lung Association gives us an F in ground ozone and particulate matter, both potentially deadly. As a North Salem resident living near Algonquin's large southeast compressor station, I'm already impacted by its emissions, especially during extra venting on blowdowns in temperature inversions with wind blowing in my direction. Ground ozone that's formed by combustion emissions, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, heat and sunlight, has potential grave consequences for children, the elderly, pulmonary, cardiovascular, and other health-compromised populations. I have COPD and nearly died during a January blowdown. Yet when my town supervisor requested notification from Spectra before blowdown so residents can take emergency measures, Spectra refused, saying, as you heard Amy Rosemary say, because they don't have facilities in our town, they're not required. Hopefully, Westchester County legislature will secure notification as passed in their AIM resolution and be able to warn all town residents. AIM proposes to expand the same southeast compressor station. Many proposed toxic pollutants will far exceed threshold limits, yet industry gets away with poisoning us and our air by using air credits from their other infrastructure under threshold limits, a practice that should be outlawed to expose us to air unfit for human consumption. And now we hear of a second expansion of Algonquin Atlantic Bridge and this same compressor station, again increased to a giant size. Will I be able to remain in my home? I believe the entire process of hydrofracking that's ruining our planet's fresh water, forest, land, and air should be criminalized as the active ecocide that it is, and those facilitating it jailed as Class C felons. Putnam and Westchester counties, tomorrow Rockland, we hope, and pipeline towns Cortlandt, Peekskill, Yorktown, Somers, plus Phillipstown, passed resolutions calling for measures including independent baseline air testing, risk and health assessments, all submitted to FERC but not included in this deficient EIS. I concur with my Westchester legislator. I implore FERC, amend the EIS.
My name is Judith Coleman, Judith Coleman, and I am a resident of the village of Croton-on-Hudson. I will be reading comments prepared by economist Jeanette Barth, Janettebarth. Dr. Barth is a PhD economist and a resident of the town of Cortland. She has written, lectured, and testified extensively on the economic impacts of energy production and infrastructure development. Her comments are as follows. Risks and costs. The risks and costs for communities near an expanded natural gas pipeline are not addressed adequately in FERC's DEIS. It does not appear that a risk assessment was conducted by FERC. Spectra states in its own SEC filings, quote, there are a variety of hazards and operating risks inherent in natural gas transmission and storage, such as leaks, explosions, mechanical problems, activities of third parties, and damage to pipelines, facilities, and equipment caused by hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, fires, and other natural disasters that could cause substantial financial losses. For pipeline and storage assets located near populated areas, the level of damage resulting from these risks could be greater, end quote. These risks and losses would be substantial. Each neighboring community deserves a thorough and properly conducted risk assessment. FERC should provide this, and it is shocking that without conducting such a risk assessment, FERC's DEIS concludes, quote, the project is not expected to have any long-term negative economic impact, end quote. The risks described by Spectra indicate that FERC's conclusion is wrong. There are significant potential long-term negative economic impacts associated with the AIM project. Property values. The impact on property values has not been sufficiently analyzed. The DEIS briefly addresses these concerns. However, no mention is made of a tipping point of energy infrastructure development in a single community or region. It is likely that with extensive development of dirty energy projects, a community will become known as a home to fossil fuel and nuclear infrastructure, as opposed to a safe and pleasant community in which to raise a family. 3, negligible permanent job creation. FERC's DEIS confirms that few jobs would be created by the AIM project. It states that after construction, Algonquin would add only 3 full-time permanent workers for operation of the proposed and modified facilities. The natural gas industry often highly exaggerates job creation in the hope of encouraging community leaders to approve projects. It is time for FERC to stop rubber stamping approvals of methane gas infrastructure projects such as pipelines. The long history of FERC's approval indicates that FERC tends to side with the gas industry rather than seriously consider concerns of the populace. In the case of the AIM project, FERC appears to have ignored the economic cost of climate change. Multiple studies have shown that it's feasible to transition to a clean energy economy. In conclusion, the AIM project is unnecessary and will result in significant risks and costs to nearby communities. There will be costs to the larger region due to increased production of CL gas.
I'm going to remind you again from my earlier part of the speech. I'm the timekeeper.
Number 8.
And then 9 and 10 should be ready to go next.
Courtney Williams, Courtney-Williams. I am speaking tonight as a resident. My home in Peekskill is 450 feet from the pipeline. I'm also speaking as a parent. My daughter will start kindergarten at Buchanan Plank Elementary in the fall, also 450 feet from the new pipeline. Finally, I am speaking as a scientist with a doctorate in molecular biology. As a resident, as a parent, and certainly as a scientist, this project is unsafe, unwarranted, and unsupported by the draft EIS. In the absence of an independent and transparent risk assessment, the public is unable to comment effectively on the dangers this project would pose to our community. However, from peer-reviewed scientific literature, we know that a rupture of a pipeline this immense size from a distance of 450 feet would result in 100% mortality rate for those outdoors unprotected, such as our children and staff at the BV school. We also know that from standard operating procedure for emergency response, it is to shut off the flow of gas and wait for the fire to burn out before initiating any search and recovery. There would be no rescue. FERC and Spectra are asking our community to accept this for our children in the absence of any data as to the risk it poses. That is unacceptable. The following issues are not addressed in the draft EIS. Will Algonquin commission or reimburse the school district for conducting a transparent and independent risk analysis study along the lines of what is required by the California Department of Education to determine the risks to a school in such close proximity to a 42-inch high-pressure natural gas pipeline and Indian Point? The National Research Council, in their publication Transmission Pipelines and Land Use, a risk-informed approach, state for the largest and highest pressure natural gas pipelines, injury is possible out to 1,000 feet. To lessen risk, they suggest possible land use techniques include, for example, establishing setbacks, regulating and prohibiting certain types of uses and structures, such as schools. Clearly, the National Research Council would consider allowing this pipeline in such close proximity an unwise risk. According to Richard Cooperitz, pipeline engineer and president of Accufax, for fixed non-pipeline facilities, fence boundary thermal flux limits are usually set at a maximum of 5 kilowatts per meter squared, or lower for new plants in many countries. If FERC were to consider that limit in siting this pipeline, it would have to be over 2,500 feet from the BV school. Will Algonquin provide an early ignition pipeline rupture heat flux versus distance curve that can be publicly reviewed and defended so that parents, administrators, public officials, and staff of BV can see for themselves the risks? If the assessment deems the risk unacceptable and the district acts, is Spectra Algonquin prepared to compensate the district for the loss of the school? And will FERC consider the outcome of such a risk assessment and choose the no-build option? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Lindberg, E-R-I-K-L-I-N-D-B-E-R-G. I'm a Peekskill resident. This is an addendum to my previous comments. As cited in the DEIS, the area through which this pipeline will pass includes several areas designated as crucial in the 2004 Croton to Highlands Biodiversity Plan by Miller and Clemens. Of particular note are Blue Mountain Reservation in the vicinity, which will be completely bisected by the pipeline right-of-way. The DEIS states that much of the proposed pipeline routes are located along existing rights-of-way and in areas that are already developed and highly fragmented. But peer-reviewed primary scientific literature contests this conclusion. Blue Mountain Reservation at 1,535 acres does not fit any accepted definition of an edge habitat and is not fragmented. Using Robinson et al., published in Science, 1995, definition as a forest interior, as more than 250 meters from an edge, Blue Mountain is approximately 2 square miles, or 1,600 acres, of interior, high-quality forest. This does not fit with the statements in the DEIS that most of this forest is edge habitat. Miller and Clemens, in their 2004 plan, characterized Blue Mountain as a biodiversity hub, key properties being adequate acreage, at least 1,000 acres, to support species that require large expanses of habitat, relatively high-quality, non-degraded habitat conditions, and linkages to other landscape units enabling movement among them, such as dispersal or migration. At present, the 6-foot right-of-way does not constitute a fragmentation barrier, However, the 75-foot work area will result in forest fragmentation and the introduction of edge forest right through the center of Blue Mountain Reservation. The combination of the loss of forest for the right-of-way and the introduction of edge forest along its perimeter would result in loss of approximately 400 acres of interior forest from Blue Mountain Reservation. 400 acres is a quarter of the entire park. The project is proposed to result in loss or conversion to edge forest of approximately that much. Blue Mountain is not edge forest, it is not fragmented, it supports forest interior species. Thus, the DEIS discounting effects on this area are inappropriate and should be reassessed. Included in the vicinity is Dickey Brook. This brook and wetlands lies completely within the proposed work area. Routinely floods during heavy rains, completely blocking Reynolds Hill and surrounding areas with muddy water. It also bisects the Furnace Brook Headwater Preserve completely. The impacts of this bisection on the biodiversity, wetlands, and water quality are not addressed in the DEIS, nor the impacts to Sylvan Glen in Yorktown. In order for FERC to adequately assess the impact of this project, Algonquin must resubmit analysis of these and other areas that have been mischaracterized as fragmented or edge forest. They must account for the loss of habitat and impact on the biodiversities of populations therein. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bernard Voorhey, V as in Victor, A-G-H-E-Y. I'm a professional engineer. While Spectre has supposedly provided documents for adding 342,000 decatherms of supply, I question whether actual replacement of the pipeline is necessary for this volume. Is there an independent needs assessment that verifies this? If so, where is that report? Please produce that in a revised DEIS. If a total pipeline replacement is actually necessary, wouldn't a replacement in kind with a new 26-inch line at the requested higher pressure be sufficient for the needs of the project as submitted? If not, certainly a larger 30-inch line with the 25% higher pressure should handle the 13% increase in system capacity from 2.6 to 2.93 billion cubic feet per day Spectra is requesting. Why a 42-inch line instead of a 26, a 30, or a 36-inch line? Is there something we're not being told? Future expansion, export? The 30-inch line will remain in service, while from March to November of 2016, the 26-inch line is physically removed and replaced with a 42-inch line. So, for much of the year, only one line is necessary to provide the gas to New England. Therefore, it appears the 26-inch line and now the 42-inch line is needed only for seasonal and/or peak uses. Why doesn't the DEIS review other peaking methods, like storage in New England, closer to the demand, with less or no impact or damage to New York? What are the other options? What is the real intention of the larger 42-inch line? Since the existing 26-inch line from Stony Street to Southeast is not being replaced, what can the 60-year-old line handle? Can the 60-year-old line handle the increased pressure and capacity of the AIM project? Portions of the 26-inch line appear to be left in place with the even higher capacities of the Atlantic Bridge project. How much capacity can the existing 26-inch line actually handle? Where is that information in the reports and in the DEIS? Why specifically does the existing 26-inch line from Stony Point not work? All right, with 9/11, the original date of this meeting still fresh in our minds. With these increases, the AIM and the Atlantic Bridge projects being considered and no alternatives being built or modified, Spectra, with FERC's knowledge and cooperation, exposes New York State, and specifically Cortlandt, to the potential for a catastrophic beyond imagination. We're ringing the warning bell. Do you hear us? Do not make us a bigger target than we already are. Our burden is already great. We have 2 nuclear power plants with spent fuel rods. We'll have for decades, if not centuries. Thank you.
My name is Rosemarie Scolo. ROSEMARIEMUSCOLO. I live in Verplank, about 500 feet from where this proposed gas line is going to be, through our Little League field and on into Buchanan behind the school my children attended. I have serious concerns about many aspects of this proposal and reiterate by reference all of the issues brought to your attention this evening. The number of open action items and omissions in the draft environmental statement raise grave concerns about the integrity of this project and the review process. I am particularly concerned about the new pipeline loop from Stony Point in Rockland under the Hudson River through Verplank and into Buchanan. This new loop has 200%, from my understanding, higher capacity than the existing lines. Will run less than 1,000 feet from my neighborhood alongside a proposed by West Point Partners 1,000 megawatt high voltage converter station and buried cables, less than 500 feet from the elementary school, past Indian Point, and 40 years of spent nuclear fuel. Even if Indian Point is at some point shut down, the spent fuel will, in reality, remain in place in perpetuity. Although the possibility may be remote, the results of an accident in the Buchanan area of the pipeline would be catastrophic. At the very least, impacting New York City and our region's power supply. At its worst, the results are unthinkable. Spectre fails to show the need for such a significant increase in the capacity of that line. The New England states are seeking additional gas to meet their high demand periods. Yet those in Massachusetts are up in arms against a proposed new pipeline through their own state. It is respectfully suggested that New England states explore other avenues to meet those needs, such as locally based storage facilities. Those of us who live along the proposed route should not be forced to bear the cross of this project with our health, safety, and quality of life so that Spectra and the New Englanders can have less expensive fuel, or so that Spectra and other private companies can profit not only on new supplies to New England, but on likely sale of the excess gas to overseas markets. I implore FERC require a comprehensive, independent, and transparent review of all health impacts upon the community, as well as for complete EIS. All open items must be fully vetted prior to the issuance of permits. The scale of this project demands it. My life is on the line. If I could just turn these in, these are petitions signed by 40 some odd people who cannot attend tonight.
Okay, we're up to speaker number 12, which will be 13 and 14. So get ready to come up next.
Hi, my name is Jenny Sunshine, that is spelled Jennie, Sunshine, Sunshine. I am making these comments under protest. FERC's approval process and draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, are fundamentally flawed, and I demand that the DEIS be withdrawn and that a supplemental draft environmental impact statement be submitted for public review only after all relevant parties have submitted all necessary information. My husband and I own our own home 4 blocks away from the pipeline. My children play at the playground at Willow Pond on Curry Street in Yorktown Heights, where the pipeline and its venting pipes are present. And my children attend Thomas Jefferson Elementary in Yorktown Heights, a mere 400 feet from the pipeline. So I and my family are directly affected by this project. I also have a comment regarding the DEIS. In section 4.3.2.1, incomplete stormwater information. As noted in this section of the DEIS, the construction ware yard is located within the Croton watershed, a part of the New York City's drinking water supply, which provides drinking water to 9 million people. The DEIS also notes that the required Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, or SWPP, for this parcel has not yet been submitted. Consequently, in the absence of the SWPP, there is no way for the public to intelligently comment on the potential negative impact of stormwater runoff from the construction wear yard or the proposed launcher receiver facility or pigging station. Also on town-owned parkland within the watershed. It should also be noted that deforestation of 15 plus acres of land will exacerbate the stormwater runoff problem. Thank you very much.
UNACURRAN. I am requesting that the close of the public comment period for the draft EIS, currently scheduled for September 29th, be extended for 9 months. I am commenting this evening under protest. The DEIS is fatally flawed and inadequate. How on earth can the public possibly comment on 42 issues that you haven't even addressed? It's insane. I just don't get it. How can you have published a final EIS date of December 19th, 2014 when you haven't even heard what we had to say this evening? Can someone explain that to me, please? I don't get it. How do you have a final date when you haven't even addressed the deficiencies in your draft EIS? The fact that the Indian Point Energy Center hazard assessment is not included in this draft EIS alone should make you withdraw this draft. That is a major issue. It needs to be addressed. We need to have time to review it. By Spectra's own admission, they do not carry enough insurance coverage to adequately cover infrastructure damage during construction or liability coverage for any type of disaster post-construction. By allowing this lack of adequate insurance, you're asking the taxpayers and residents to become the guarantors of this project. This is not acceptable. We don't want this pipeline, and we're not footing the bill when something goes wrong. The proposed plan to place the pipeline within 450 feet of BV Elementary School is unacceptable, unconscionable. The 1950 U.S. Census data shows Westchester County population of 625,000 people. The 2010 census shows a population of 949,000 people. That's a 50% increase. Isn't it time we talked about decommissioning these pipelines instead of expanding them, given the population increase? The health and safety issues need to be examined very closely, as we already have a higher than normal asthma rate. The emissions from compressor stations and metering stations need to be more closely monitored and regulated in order to preserve air quality and mitigate health issues that stem from VOCs and toxins being released at these stations. In conclusion, I say to FERC, the commissioners of FERC, my life and that of my neighbors, their children, and all communities along this proposed project, our lives are not disposable. We will not be collateral damage so that a multi-billion-dollar company can make money, ruin our beautiful historic Hudson Valley, and wreak havoc upon our health and safety. Thank you.
My name is Gail Pisha, G-A-L-E-P-I-S-H-A, and I live in Rockland County. I'm speaking tonight for Sierra Club's Lower Hudson Group, which has about 4,000 members in Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland, the counties through which the AIM pipeline will run in New York State. Sierra Club requests that FERC withdraw its flawed DEIS, complete all required studies, and conduct the health and safety impact assessments requested by county legislatures and citizens along the route before reissuing a supplemental EIS with a new 90-day comment period. The present DEIS is not complete. It does not consider important health and safety concerns, such as the proximity of the pipeline to Indian Point and the impacts of emissions along the route on the health of nearby residents. The DEIS also fails to mention the contributions of natural gas to climate change. Unburned methane, which leaks from all parts of the shale gas extraction and transmission process, is 86 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over 20 years. And burning all that natural gas that's being carried by the Algonquin pipeline produces carbon dioxide, which was one of the leading causes of climate change. So for these reasons, and because of the pollution that hydraulic fracturing causes to water, land, and air, Sierra Club opposes all new fossil fuel infrastructure. But the good news is that all this new natural gas infrastructure is not even necessary. A peer-reviewed study by scientists and engineers has shown that New York State can transition off fossil fuels 85% by 2030 and 100% by 2050 using currently available technology. This study, called the Wind, Water, and Sunlight Plan, will save billions of dollars because people will no longer be getting sick or dying from fossil fuel-driven air pollution. The plan will create about 3 times as many permanent jobs, and that's 40-year jobs, as would be added by the fossil fuel industry, and it will reduce the impact of energy generation on climate change. It will lead to greater energy security and more stable energy pricing in the future. So in conclusion, I ask FERC to more fully address the health and safety concerns related to its current DEIS. For a project so vulnerable to so many risks, including terrorism, it would really be doing the public a disservice to rubber stamp Spectra's proposal without fully assessing its potential impacts, especially since it's not even needed. Thank you.
Does anybody have a ticket number 15 on it? If not, we're moving to 16. Okay, number 16.
Good evening. I'm Paula Claire, C-L-A-I-R, and I'm a Garrison resident and co-founder of Sept. Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland counties are densely populated areas with a combined population of 1,370,000. There is virtually nowhere in this area to place the Algonquin Incremental Market AIM pipeline that will not severely interfere with many families' life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which are rights guaranteed by our Constitution. Nor does the path of this project sufficiently protect threatened or endangered animal species here. AIM follows the most dangerous route for its huge 42-inch diameter high-pressure pipeline, 1,500 feet, from the Indian Point nuclear plant, which is sited on 2 earthquake faults and houses 40-plus years of highly radioactive spent fuel, mostly in relatively unsecured spent fuel pools. A gas pipeline explosion or fire 1,500 feet from Indian Point could cause a long-term disaster of catastrophic proportion, reaching as far as New York City and its 8.5 million people. And clearly, explosions and fires in these large pipelines are not rare, with 70 such incidents, significant incidents, reported in 2013 by U.S. Pipeline Hazardous Material and Safety Administration for these large pipelines. Our nation has always espoused the credo that our children are our future, but the path of this pipeline passes within 450 feet of 2 elementary schools, putting them well within a high consequence area. That means in a pipeline rupture, unsheltered children and adults would be incinerated within 90 seconds, 100% mortality. Many homes here have the same or worse risk, with some homes 200 feet from the pipeline. A second peril of AIM is its assault on our air. Thousands of tons of toxic emissions will be released from compressor stations in Stony Point and Southeast, with 4 toxins, including known carcinogens, significantly over EPA thresholds. Health impacts include heart disease, respiratory illness, elevated blood pressure, and increased risk for cancer. This is legal since AIM can buy credits from areas with cleaner air, but it is immoral to degrade our air, which will certainly result in increased illness, especially in our children, who are more susceptible to toxins. There is something fundamentally wrong with a government so disinterested in the health and safety of its people, which permits this risk to people who work to afford the American dream, a safe home to raise their children in a healthy setting. There is something very wrong. Okay.